Nation in Conversation, proudly brought to you by Senves, Grain SA, Avgreen, John Deere, Engen and Monsanto.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor today again to have the first session of Nation in Conversation. The aim of this discussion is to get common ground, to get viewpoints across, to include as wide as possible people involved. And today, we are very honored to have the Minister of Agriculture, Minister Senzani Zokwana, with us as a guest. Minister, welcome. Thank you very much. I think it's the first agriculture minister in a number of years, and we really appreciate it, and we look forward to your contribution. Next to him is the editor of the Sowetan, Mpumelelo Nkabela. I hope I got that right. I was on the way here reciting it about 20 times, but welcome. Thank you very much. And we appreciate the fact that we have media that's not traditionally involved in agriculture here today, and we look forward to your inputs. Thank you very much. Then next to him is the Vice Chairman of Grain SA. That is Mr. Victor Monguatu. And again, I hope I have that right, Victor. At least Victor will be a bit easier for me. Thank you very much and welcome. Dan Max de Pre, probably one of South Africa's most well-known political analysts and writers. Max, thank you very much for coming again. We look forward to your contribution. Next to Max is Philip Retief. Philip is the Chief Executive Officer of Van Loveren Wine Cellars and Four Cousins Wines. Thank you very much, Philip. And then Malcolm Manyana. He is the head, as he stated, of Stakeholder Relations and Director at Avgreen, one of South Africa's bigger agricultural companies. Malco, thank you very much. I would like to start this conversation, Mr. Minister, with you. The agriculture is if you look around Nampo and you look around the agriculture industry, it's an industry that is moving forward. It's an industry that is looking at the future. But part of that is there's noises. We know the drought that we currently have. We have Eskom that has problems. But we also have an environment where there's political uncertainty. And in that respect, I would like to start with you, Minister, your portfolio and your role in taking agriculture forward. How do you see that?
Thanks. As a department, we believe that we have to make sure that there is hope for farmers, to make sure that notwithstanding the challenges of climate change, they can still plant and they can still be able to come to this day. I understand the issue you have raised about uncertainties that are political, but one of those would be the debate around land reform. I believe that as a country, we've got a history of successes under very tough conditions. We are regarded as people who have been able to go through very murky situation to find a formula to deal with political issues. What we need, I think, is to make sure that we expand the dialogue, we share the views, and we don't give up and say we go away. There's no place as beautiful as South Africa. And my department, among other things, is to ensure that we create markets for farmers, global markets, as the China's agreement with China, to make sure that as you plant maize, you know that you won't keep it in your silo forever, but there's somebody who's looking for it. It was unfortunate that at that time we have just signed that agreement, we were struck by these conditions. But one of the things I believe that is that we need to adapt to the conditions of climate change. We need to be more smarter in the way we do things. We must make sure that we use water in some of the areas where we cannot, which calls upon the other Minister of Water and Sanitation. We need to find a situation where, as ministers, we don't talk above people, we talk with people, so that what we come up with, we can be able to explain. I hope that we will be able, and farmers will find a room where they can be able to invite ministers, so that we can even be able to understand how you view the things we think should be done.
Minister, I want to follow up on that. During the past 10 days, Titu Mboweni sent out allegedly a tweet that he said that the farmland that has been redistributed are not producing to the maximum potential they could produce, whereas the commercial farmers that are producing to the maximum potential is sometimes felt as if they are the enemy of the government. Your comments on that?
I don't think that is the view of government, that farmers who produce optimally are the enemies of government, because we can only feed the nation only if everybody produces to his capacity, to capacity of his farm. But what has happened is that, and that's my view, is that when people were given access to land, neither training was offered for them to understand what is happening, nor do we have promoted mentorship to create people who are champions, who can be able to be used to say, this is your neighbor, he's a new farmer, is coming on board. I was amazed when I was in Mozambique recently to visit some of our projects in Mozambique, that what we do in Mozambique, we don't do here. Before a person is introduced to any form of agriculture, he is taken to an institution in Cape Town, he is trained. By the time he gets a cow that he must look after and produce milk, he knows very well what this cow is supposed to eat, how he's supposed to take care of it. It's something I believe that we're going to implement in the department to make sure that we promote the work of the extension officers, which has been a failure on the recent years, that these farmers who are new in the agriculture has been left alone to struggle. Funding on its own would never take the place of experience and knowledge, is what I think we need to come up to. I do agree with Mbweni to say that, but not all the new entrants have been in that state. But yes, a big number have been. It's something that as the two ministries now, and again, there was a disjuncture between what agriculture was doing and land reform was doing. A guy will get a farm and agriculture will be away. We will not be able to be near to make sure that as he gets the farm, we're able to be of assistance to him so that the farm does not lose its productivity because of the gap in between.
I'm going to come back to that point. Max, I want to pick up on you. Farming and agriculture is, however we look at it, there's incredible depth of emotion linked to farming, to the land issue, to successful farming. On the one hand, you have a history where a child will grow up on a farm. All he wants to be is a farmer one day, and the farmer's been in the family for generations. It's producing, and it's a successful commercial farm. Next to that, you have the bloke that sits next to the road and watch these 4x4s drive to Nampo. And for him, land and farming has a complete different frame of reference. If one takes the realistic view of South Africa, and that is almost a synopsis of where South Africa is. From a land point of view, what is your comment?
Yeah, I think we sit with two sets of realities, two sets of dynamics, and 21 years later, we haven't brought them together to touch. The one is, when it comes to land reform, is a political question. It's about symbolism, it's about history, it's about justice, it's about black dignity. So you'll see a lot of angry voices and emotional voices saying, we want our land back. And I think this debate is much hotter now with the guys with the red berets exaggerating this point. The other side of land reform is the agricultural realities, the economic realities. And here you see commercial farmers accentuating their insecurity. That what is going to happen next? What will we do next? Is my land safe? Can I invest? And we ask the question, if you give land, can we afford land to not be productive? And I think we need to bring these two together and say, how much symbolism and the strive for dignity and justice and the correction of history, how should that influence the realities of commercial agriculture? Because even as we see in Zimbabwe now, the president of Zimbabwe is now saying, hey, you guys that got the farms, you can't just sit on it. You got to farm it. You got to farm it productively. And if you don't farm productively, I'm going to take it away. So that sense of reality is setting in. We need political leadership from all sides to say, this is how we bring these two together. That the angry people who want the symbolism to be handled should also realize the economic realities of these are the people who make our food, bring our food security, and they are crucial to our economy. And these guys who make the food and who run the farms should realize that there is a symbolic, historic, political element to it.
I want to take on that point, Philip, and I want to start with you. You guys have done transactions even before it was law. You guys have successful transactions. It can work. What was the elements? Why did it work in your case?
Theo, yes, we did a very successful transaction in 2004, 2005 already. So as you rightfully say, 10 years ago. Very, very thoughtful at that stage and the right thing to do. I think you have to be, your mindset has to be right as a commercial farmer, that you want to change and you want to contribute, you want to embrace the change of where we are.
That give and take, the give element, has everybody made peace with that element?
I hope so. In our region, in our area, which I can speak about, the grape industry, there's a big willingness to change and to want to embrace change. We did a transaction in 2004 where we purchased new land. We were in a growth phase as a business. The government at that stage had the LRAD schemes working where there were subsidies given to individual workers or individual persons. And a group of 116 of our employees received this subsidy. So much so that they, through a workers' trust, today own 52% of this 138-hectare farm. For the past 10 years, we've been able to declare dividend every year. We've increased the capital value of the project by threefold. We've done a lot of mentorship. The minister has alluded to that now. I think that's very important. We have got a 48% interest as well. So we have got a vested risk, but also a vested interest, which we need to protect. I think that's the way that we have to do these types of transactions, where you can bring in your employees or labor, because the part of today's talk was about labor, and how you can grow those individuals and make them board members, make them trustees. They can become foremen, secretaries in the business, and we become a partnership, and together we are growing this business, which is wonderful.
The point is that there is examples. So it's not an insurmountable challenge. There is more than enough examples. But I want to come back to you, Mpumelelo. You are the editor of the Sowetan, which is a publication that's obviously, and I can state it, it's not read by most of the community sit in front of us. It's got a different constituency. But before we get there, you actually have a very strong link to farming. Can you tell us about that?
Well, not that I'm a farmer myself, nor do I own land, but our family has a history with farming. I come from the small town of Komatipoort, big farming area there. My grandparents were removed from their land as part of the apartheid scheme, and they were put in some other land that was considered less fertile. And then under that system, it was a communal land. So the chief would, everyone who settles in the area would also be given a small space to farm. So they depended on indigenous methods of farming. My grandmother, who was in a polygamous arrangement, had to look after her children, one of them being my father. And she had no schooling at all, never went to any modern school. But she used to farm a reasonably big farm. She was a subsistence-stroke commercial farmer. So she used to harvest a lot of vegetables, maize, and things like that. And then she would go to the markets, sell some of it to pay school fees of my father, and then save some of it for the rainy day. Somehow the old people knew when there was going to be drought. I don't know how they knew it, but they knew. They had some indigenous way of understanding these things. I believe that my grandmother was both an agricultural economist and an agricultural scientist who never went to school.
If it wasn't for your grandmother, you probably would not have sat here today.
No, I wouldn't, because she was instrumental in sending my father to school using the proceeds of the small holding that she had at the time. And she understood somehow, I don't know how, she understood the importance of education, that she needed to give my father an opportunity. And without that, my father would not have been a headmaster and I wouldn't be here. So the issue of land is important. I just wonder what would have happened had they not been removed back then from the farm that would have been more productive for them. But here is the issue for me now, going forward, because we're looking for constructive solutions. We have to appreciate that agriculture and mining were at the center of the establishment of what we now have as a modern South Africa, the modern economy. But they developed in a system of excluding other people. Now, that is the past. Now, clearly, if we have to move forward, agriculture and mining would have to be at the center of taking us forward. There are no better industries to illustrate progress than those that were at the center of exclusion. So, and the only way you can do that, as far as I'm concerned, is to create these bridges where people can connect. The example that Mr. Retief has given, it's a very important example. If in the whole of South Africa we have examples like that, then we have a strong nation to build, a strong economy to build, where everyone feels they have a stake in the system. They don't feel excluded, because once people feel excluded, then they have no incentive to protect the system. They want to harm it. Make people have a stake in the system.
Do you, from your side, and I want you, perhaps this is slightly unfair, but your readership, which is a urban readership that is, although they have agriculture roots, they are not linked to big commercial agriculture. You wouldn't see that readership necessarily queuing to buy a John Deere t-shirt. How do we get that community part of a constructive debate?
Well, we, as a newspaper and many other media groups, should be at the center of creating the platforms for debate. Unfortunately, we have not done sufficient work in that regard, and we owe it to the nation to do it. I think these kinds of conversations, they stimulate a lot of thinking towards that. And I think that in most of our reporting, we will report on a story about a big land reform project that the minister is going to cut a ribbon there, a big community is being given land. And once that happens, nobody goes back to check 2 years later or 6 months later what has happened. By the time we wake up, the whole land has been stripped of all the material that was there, is lying fallow, it's not producing. We're not telling the stories of my village, for example, where with all the successes of my grandmother, who worked very hard with her bare hands, the land now in my village mostly is lying fallow. We are not asking the questions. Why are the young people moving at a faster pace? This rapid rural-urban migration, people coming into the cities, congesting the cities, demanding houses, demanding all kinds of things, mounting huge service delivery protests in the cities, because the opportunities in the rural areas are being wasted. Everything is being closed down. I think we're not holding the minister accountable enough for those kinds of policies.
I think the point there is that in a lot of cases, agriculture is in this community seen as an aspirational job, something you want to be in. Malco, you are head of stakeholder relations at AFGRI. Obviously, as part of your portfolio is development and the assistance of developing new farmers. From your point of view, what is from a corporate entity involved in this, what's the major challenges and what are you struggling with? Yeah. Why is it not going at the pace that it should?
Yeah, to us as AFGRI, we have decided to embrace change and ensure that transformation really takes place. As an example, we have set up a unit specifically dedicated to the development of the emerging farmers. And of importance, or something to be proud about, is that the first 30 people whom we took, we have got about 3 centers. We take them, they are farming on communal land. But those farmers, all of them were successful in the first crop. They were able to pay off their loan. Only one had a problem of the weather. Again, the land, his crop was insured. So that is proof enough to say, if we don't sit back and just say, we will see what the government doing, we take the initiative, it can work. So what we are doing around South Africa is that we have started with a program of the development of the emerging farmers.
What would assist you in accelerating that?
I think we need more stakeholders, including in particular the government, to be part and parcel of it. But other provinces, for example, we have already signed memorandum of understanding, where together we deal with the issue of mechanization, where together we deal with the issues of finance. And in all those, we have seen it successful. I can give an example of Mpumalanga. We had tractors, as my colleague is saying, which are lying somewhere, which the government has bought, but we were able to repair all of them by jointly working with the government last year. Unfortunately, because of drought, they may not have achieved what they could have achieved.
Victor, I'll come to you just now, but Mr. Minister, from this panel, there's nobody disputing the fact that we need agriculture to change and we need a playing field where it can happen. A few times your ministry was noted. Comments?
Yes, I'm happy with the views of Mpumelelo Mkhabela, because I agree with him that sometimes the media should be playing a role that is constructive, that is informative, that even pushes us to do more. But taking up the views raised by Mr. Manyama, yes, I'm happy because only on Monday, I was talking to the CFO of the department. He will be coming to you. Because we have seen the mistake we committed, the issue you are referring to, the buying of tractors by government, throwing them everywhere. When you go next time, you don't see where they are because the people they were given to has never had a tractor in his own life. And as a result, those tractors are dysfunctional. Or they have become a source of dispute in villages. Others want to hire them up. So I'm very happy with your program, but he will be coming to you because we believe that partnering with you will assist so that not only are the funds available, but also our technical know-how in the department would work very handy with your expertise in other areas. Because agriculture, as I said earlier, is going to flourish in the areas where there are problems. If we can do a few things, partnering with the private sector to make sure that there's mentorship. I always believe that even the vulnerability that sometimes farmers find is because there's no debate or finding the neighboring communities to appreciate the role a farmer plays. He creates employment, he guarantees that there will be crops, there will be food, but he becomes lonely because there's no debate. I have had a meeting recently with AfriForum to say, let's find one voice in dealing with the challenges of farmers, including those that are very, very life-threatening. So in my view, I believe that I take what you are saying, and we'll make sure that by the end of this week, Mr. Hlaswayo, the CFO, will meet with you, and we'll make sure that all the MECs of agriculture becomes MECs of agriculture, because as in the department, we are supposed to be where farmers are. We are supposed to hear what farmers are saying. We are supposed to respond to the challenges that agriculture is facing. I agree with you. I always believe that people are saying we're hungry, and they work on very fertile soil that can be turned into profitability, provided we work. So what I'm saying, therefore, is I take what you are saying, sir, and I'm sure we'll work together so that we can change. I think the media, they only come in the picture when they're analyzing the performances of ministers. We want, not your paper, other newspapers. I would like them to do it in a way that they follow us as we go. They are able to say us, but you said this thing on this day. You have not been seen in the area you were and promised to do something.
Victor, you are at the coalface in terms of farming. If you look at the successes, what has worked, if you were to be in the position of the minister for one day, what would you do?
Well, what has worked in the past that we can be proud of, it's partnership that existed with the Department of Agriculture, particularly with the rural development from the perspective of Grain SA, where the farmers that had opportunity to access land were assisted through those partnerships. In Northwest, in Free State, those became very successful flags from our side to say, together as an industry working with the department, this can be realizable. But unfortunately, you have a national development plan that has just been agreed upon by the majority of the stakeholders. Why I'm citing that, it's because whenever the new minister comes in after the elections or whatever, he doesn't own up on what has been happening. Everybody thinks when I come in, you come on a clean slate and say, this is my idea, this is how I think things can work, and then reinventing the wheel again. That's why we could say maybe up to the 21st of the democracy, we are still battling with this issue because every time the government changes, there's a reinvention of the wheel. So if we can look into that and say, this is the agenda, this is what we agree to do, no matter what there is a new dispensation coming in or so, we need to stick to what we've agreed on, that all stakeholders were taken on board and agreed on what should be done. So I think honoring and taking serious partnerships of stakeholders, because government can not do that alone, of stakeholders who are there, who have expertise, can really bring a change and move us forward. I think that's what could happen.
Max, I want to ask you from your perspective, and you have a long history in where you cover different factions throughout a transition for a long period of time. How does one take a debate out of the realm of either almost a people that agree with one another, talking to one another and not talking to the other party? How does one get that bridge established? Because that bridge can only work if there's conversation based on trust. How do we get that bridge going? It's almost like one portion of the farming community is in a kind of a circle, a dumpkring, where they talk to one another. The other side talks to one another, but this trust bridge is not there. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think that is a major problem. And every time we talk about land reform and agriculture, this is what comes up. You're talking about two constituencies that are light years apart, and the two don't meet. The one problem, of course, is that our political climate, our political temperature is fairly high in South Africa. There is strong contestation for political power. We're going into a new election in less than a year. So all parties in a democracy want to use the strongest possible language to impress the voters, to attract the voters. And this land issue is a very emotive one. So even the government, and even, not this minister, but all the other ministers, are sometimes tempted to say things in a certain way that would not create political problems for its party, for the party. So I had that feeling when I listened to Minister Nkwinti last week on the caps of farm ownership, because it didn't make an awful lot of sense to me. And when I was asked, I said, well, remember that Minister Nkwinti is also a member of the ruling party, and there's an election, and he has to worry about the Red Berets and NUMSA, so maybe not taking that seriously. And that's the problem. Then you have the same with AfriForum and Solidarity and Freedom Front Plus and even the DA, that they have to make statements on this very sensitive issue. And then we, instead of getting closer, we're getting further apart. I think media, very, very important. And that's why, to me, it's a breakthrough that Mpumelelo is here, that we will get a wider understanding of the realities of agriculture in the broader black community, but also that the white, mostly white agricultural community would have a window in how they are being perceived. And it's not a nice view. I mean, I think we should all agree that the image of white agriculture is not perfect among black people. So we need to bridge this divide very actively through taking some political risks, through being innovative and being very, very honest about one of the most fundamental issues in the society. Because land, everywhere in Africa, but everywhere in the world, land is where you start talking when you start talking politics. So extra careful in what we say, but also extra bold to be heard on the other side and to communicate more to the other side of the divide.
Max, we haven't missed the train, have we? There's still time.
Fortunately, our trains are normally a little bit late. So we can still jump up on the last wagon. No, train. The one thing that we shouldn't do, in my view, is that we shouldn't say, oh, it's all a smash, and there's no hope, and we're becoming Zimbabwe or becoming a failed state. And I see too much of that around, of that kind of pessimism that paralyzes us. And if there's no hope left, then, and farmers live with hope. If they don't have hope, they have nothing. So we need to shake off this paralysis of we're so divided, we have such a difficult problem that we can't get over it. We can. The one thing that we all in this country can agree on is the saying, and this constituency, people who sit here can identify with it, a boer maak 'n plan. And that goes for everybody in this country. We do. The worst never happens here. We always cope. But maybe we should do it a little bit better and not just survive, but start thriving.
Churchill said about the Americans that they try all the wrong things and end up doing the right thing in the end. And I hope we're not always going to be there. Philip, your point of view, in terms of your second projects that you're busy with, if there's one or two things you can change or you can have influence, what would you say is a stumbling block in your specific case not to accelerate the process?
See, maybe just one step back. We're working on ground level, and there's a lot of political idealism, etc., and we appreciate all those challenges. I think the challenges we as a nation has with regards to land and land reform and labour within that is getting the parties closer together. I believe that we have three entities in this process. One would be government, one would be commercial farmers, and one would be the financial sector, be it the commercial entities or then the government entities such as IDC or DTI or Land Bank. And I think that there is a strategy and there are ideas, and it might be different ideas from different times of our history, but we need to execute. And at this stage, we are not executing. And it's not one of these parties' fault. I think it's a combination of a few factors. Financial institutions are wanting to have a good return on their financing. Commercial farmers are entrepreneurs. They want to grow the value of their business. They want to bring in new partners, but it has to be commercially successful. And government wants change. And there's some bureaucracy and some red tape there. And I think the challenge is to get these three organs working closer together to get to a quicker result, because the strategy is there and the dreams are there, but also the ideas to change. And commercial farmers, like Max just said, they will make a plan, and there are a lot of plans in place. You mentioned earlier this morning that the land value has increased over the last 20 years. Agriculture has grown. A lot of capital input is still taking place. That's an ideal opportunity in growth to embrace change and bring in new partners.
Let me, Minister, ask you, and I'm going to ask you the same question, but from two perspectives. If you were to give advice to a young labourer on a farm who said, I want to be part of a successful long-term agriculture sector, how will you answer him? And then I'm going to ask you the same question. A young third or fourth generation white privileged farmer with education who said, I'm going nowhere. My farm is here in the Free State or wherever the farm is. I want to farm here for the next decades. What would your message be to these parties? Because both of them has got aspirations. Both of them has got vastly different points of departure. But I think both of them want a long-term future for agriculture that can sustain employees, that can sustain workers, that can sustain the economy, that can provide food security. Your message to the young black farm worker or farm worker son that say, I want to make this my future, what would your message be?
My message will be based on saying to them that everybody who works dedicated will always be recognized by the employer. And trust is one of the things we need to embrace in our people. Being at work at the right time, but also the dream must be realized by the employer. If this guy shows the signs that he can be a farmer tomorrow, don't hold him only to where he is when you know that he can be somewhere else. I was happy very recently. Is that in this country, we don't tell the stories that farmers have done.
The success stories is not getting told enough.
I was at ZZ2 in Limpopo, where they have got 20% of their employees are Zimbabweans, but there's harmony on the farm. What struck me first thing was the ability of the farmers, 3 farmers speaking 2 languages, African languages, even more than I would do. 2 were speaking their brothers, they were speaking in the Fanzales, they were speaking in Spedi. But the worst one was a Mr. Pete who came to speak Shangaan. I can't speak much Shangaan. And if it was dark, I could never told that he was not an African. And they told me that in their youth, they grew among black boys who they could play with. And for them to be able to do that, they understood the language. It's one of the things I think in this country we need to embrace.
And that builds trust.
It does, because you are able to speak to a person in the language he understands.
You speak to his heart.
But I think what I'm going is to say that farmers must grow to say, I want not only to have employees on my farm, I want to produce new entrepreneurs who will be farmers tomorrow. I want to put as much knowledge into them such that when land reform comes on my farm, it will not be a guy from the township who come and say, I want a farm. It is these workers I have trained through my hands. In doing that, we'll be ensuring security of yourself as a farmer who happens to be alone in an area. 2, it will guarantee that in years of good rains, you will be able to get the maximum production in your farm. To a young farmer, I would be saying, because you are young, you are better, because the only thing you know is now. And now is that, wow, in one South Africa, and there's no other country you can dream of being into. Therefore, make sure that you treat those you work with dignity and love. You make sure that you use, and be assured that as government, we would be foolish if we cannot say the things that other parties can say in Parliament. Tomorrow I will be making my budget speech. I know there are those who will be saying, yeah, Neskhaduni, you have done nothing, and take the land tomorrow, give to people, don't pay those who have got land. Those are people can say, but I can't say those things because they will kill agriculture and not government policy. So that young farmer will say, this country is the country you can be able to produce. We have created a market for you to sell your products. We are going to broaden that debate to make sure that every South African product must find a space in Russia, find a space in China, find a space in the Americas, is what will make farmers develop and grow. But what is key is to us to be able to explain the policies we pass, to make sure that before policies are announced in public domain, there is a forum or a way that farmers can engage us. Because when you say to people, no farmer will have more than 12,000 hectares, what does it mean? You need to explain that so that farmers understand that if I need more than 12,000 hectares, what are the possibilities I can go to? And it's because, I was reading yesterday one of the farmer unions, and I always appreciate reading what they say, the Transvaal Agricultural Union. I get its release subscribed by Meneer Mentjes. I could see that there's still anger in those areas. Those are people you need to talk to, because it is through sharing of ideas that we can come together. So to a young farmer, an African who is in this country, there's a future in agriculture in this country. Let us understand your worries. Let us understand your concerns. And together, I believe, we'll build a better South Africa.
And he will be an old man in 20, 30 years having debates about other stuff, not land reform.
Of course, yes, because As I have said, if we can master, as farmers have done, notwithstanding the drought that this country has gone through, I believe that issues of land reform should be handled in a way that it does not reflect the way the story Mpumelelo tells of people being moved in the morning away, but in a way that our partners were saying, I want my farm I have sold to government not to fall tomorrow because I'm still present. And because I'm farming next door, I can still offer my knowledge. You know, in debating with AfriForum, something struck me, and they said, we're not agreeing in the first at all, but through persistence and the willingness to listen, they told me a story of how they have been able to reduce stock theft in the Eastern Cape, in Elliot, partnering with taxi drivers, finding a way where farmers would plant back to communities, producing crops and vegetables for them. And then they were able to isolate the criminals, because in all this we've got criminals who always wants to appear as if they're revolutionaries.
Yeah, if they're
when
part
there's
of
nothing like that.
They're just criminals.
Yes,
Common
they're criminals.
Victor, in the Eastern Cape, that has always been an area that is seen as something that is in a lot of cases have got some of the worst poverty problems, some of the worst poverty problems in the area. If you look at the farming community where you are part of, how do they view the future of agriculture?
I think I view it in a sense of hope and positive, because we have vast communal lands that are not under production. The skills that are a prerequisite for successful, profitable production aren't really not there. So as I mentioned earlier on, that partnerships are the only things that can take this country forward. Coming with commodity organizations and people on the ground, with partnering with government, that story can be turned around to say every part of the communal area in the Eastern Cape can actually be a part of the solution in terms of creating jobs, making sure that there's food security, and alleviating also this high demand of land when we have that social responsibility of the redress. But what do we do with the land that we have in our hands? We need to show a difference there of this is what we have, this is what we can do, then have access more. Then as you access more, that is being put into production, because that's actually the norm and the practice. So I think future and hope is there in the Eastern Cape. With the challenge of the global warming and all that, we are still in a way a bit fortunate that we are not really having that hard impact or a negative impact in the Eastern Cape.
Mpumelelo, your constituency, how does the positiveness amongst the broader agricultural sector, and here I count the farmers, the agricultural companies, the ministry, how do we translate that common vision, the fact that everybody buys into a new, better South Africa? How do we get that debate wider than purely in these forums?
I think we have to, first of all, dig deeper into ourselves as South Africans and as different stakeholders. The issue of trust is very important. In fact, the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, he gave a very interesting speech last year at a SANEF meeting, of which I'm chairman. He said that in South Africa we have a trust deficit problem. The government and a business sector, they've got a trust problem. They don't trust each other often. Labor and business, they also don't trust each other often. The media and government don't trust each other often. So you have this triangular of mistrust in society, and it's unhelpful. So you have to find a way to bridge, to build bridges and make people feel they have vested interest in the system. I'll make an example of the the adverse consequences or the negative consequences of having, of allowing the trust deficit to blow out of proportion. Not so long ago, we had a problem in Swellendam, in the Western Cape, where there was a protracted strike in the vineyards. The workers went on strike in the wine industry there, and the main issue there was wages. The workers felt they were being paid slave wages. As a result of the mistrust, some of the unions, agricultural unions, the worker unions, they began to campaign abroad that South African products must be boycotted by foreign markets. Now, as the government, the minister is saying, the government is pushing the boundaries, trying to find markets for South African products so that, we can create jobs and grow the economy here. You find exports, and foreign exchange and all of that, which is good government policy. On the other hand, the workers were campaigning at the time, some of them, that South African products must be boycotted because these products are made out of the blood of workers, slave wage, and all of that. And if South African products were to be boycotted abroad, what would be the consequences? The same farm workers would lose their jobs. So they will be shooting themselves in the foot. But that's as a result of the trust deficit being allowed to blow out of proportion, where stakeholders can't find each other. And it was good that, in fact, the government intervened there through the former Deputy President, Kgalema Motlanthe, who went there to try to facilitate a dialogue. The minister speaks about the importance of dialogue. So again, why should things blow out of proportion before we find each other? I think it's something wrong in our country. Even with this service delivery protest that we see, which is becoming part of a political culture, and in fact, it shouldn't be allowed to become part of our political culture. The engagement comes after people have damaged property. It's the same thing that you find in the relationship between labor and business. Things get out of proportion before we sit and talk.
That's a question that I think Max also touched on, the fact that you need that bridge. But let's get back, and Victor, I'm going to put you on the spot because you are at the coalface. Obviously, it's in nobody's interest to fight from a certain position. Nobody wins in the end. Where do one find common ground? And I'm asking you as a farmer, but also as your position in Grain SA. How does one manage that process?
The common ground between which sector?
Between, let's say, agriculture and government, organized agriculture and government. How does one manage that process?
Well, as Mpumelelo says, it's an element of trust. We have one common goal of making sure that South Africa remains intact, and for future generations, we can grow the economy and create employment. Both government and private sector in agriculture have that in mind to say, as a farmer, I want to leave a legacy behind for my children, for my generation to come. And as government, you have a responsibility of transformation. At the same time, you cannot just embark on some of the ideas because they happen to appease people and be populist, even if they are not practical. You need to say, what is it that is practical, that is real, that can actually take us forward? So I think the beginning of these engagements, going further outside these boardrooms, are important between all stakeholders and forum to say, how do we take agriculture forward so that we can have this common goal of nationhood between ourselves?
Should that, Malco, that common goal of nationhood, is that lived out by the agriculture companies in South Africa?
Yeah, the agricultural companies are trying their best, and they live it. I can give example. I'm aware that most of the agricultural company are not only focusing on transformation, because sometimes we look at transformation from the number of the size of the land, as we were talking. But the critical part is you find that most of the emerging farmers, as he said, the communal land, they've got maybe 10 hectares. How much tons do they produce per hectare? You find that's 1 or 1.2 or even less than 1 ton. So the issue is not only the size of the land, whereas the commercial farmer can go to 5 and 8. With the intervention or the participant or the trust which can be built to say the agricultural companies, the farmers, commercial farmers have got the know-how based on the number of years they've been there. You can be able to increase production, which implies from a 5 hectare or 1 hectare, you can go up to 5 or 8. That's what the commercial farmers are. So the private sector, in particular agricultural company, are prepared, have that trust that the government is doing the right thing. But the issue of not trusting each other, that is the
We have to
problem.
agree on that. From my side, thank you very much. If you want more on this, you can visit the website, nationinconversation.co.za, or follow us on Twitter @NationConverse. All of you there, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Nation in Conversation, proudly brought to you by Senves, Grain SA, Avgri, John Deere, Engen, and Monsanto.